Hey everyone, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and today I've got the pleasure of commentating on something that is as hard as a rock. No, I'm not talking about my married man gamer body, unfortunately. I'm talking about the KV-5, one of the oldest, if not the oldest, Tier 8 premium tanks inside the game. This Tier 8 Soviet heavy tank is as old as premium it is itself, and I would argue that this is the perfect premium tank. Why would I argue this is the perfect premium tank? Because when the KV-5 was first released, it was 7,500 gold, nice and cheap. It was also pretty terrible if you think about it from being a competitive stance. It was far worse than tech tree tanks such as the IS-3, and I'd say even probably worse than a tech tree tank like the Tiger II at the time. Had a big old weak point on front of the vehicle. The radio operator, we'll have to see how many times the radio operator dies in this replay, because he sits right here in this turret. And it is the biggest, most ugly weak point, I think, on any tank inside the game. It's also got a pretty big weak point on top of the vehicle, too. And so what that meant is that when people bought this vehicle, they made tons of credits. Not because the vehicle was incredible, but just because you can do enough. If you do 1,000 damage or 500 damage in a vehicle like this, you made a very decent profit with or without a premium account. And tanks on the other team really liked meeting these as well, because obviously if you saw the KV-5 you thought, I've got a chance. So it was actually quite fun to play tier 6 and tier 7 tanks against the KV-5 because you knew about its weak point. You didn't have to fire gold to be able to penetrate it, and being able to penetrate tanks that were 1 or 2 tiers higher than you just gives you a massive experience bonus. Every tier higher the tank is than you is 10% extra experience. Obviously, probably a lot easier to be able to damage same tier tanks, but if you can do damage to tanks that are higher tier than you, it is just a nice little perk to have, and you can have some crazy experience games. Another reason why the KV-5 is just so ridiculous to play, yeah, something that is as hard as a rock, ramming into something that is very lightly armored like this Borsig, oh dear. Well, that was pretty much the dream scenario for this tank, and one of my favorite things about this replay indeed. Just shows you what the KV-5 was good for and still is good for. It's derping around, it doesn't take itself seriously. And back in the day, it didn't really damage the game for anyone who decided to purchase it. They weren't having a detrimental impact on the matchmaker, unlike something like the Defender has now. When you see a Defender on the enemy team, you're like, oh, for goodness sake, that guy's paid to win and got a completely overpowered vehicle. Now, I'm not judging anyone who chooses to buy the Defender. In fact, I would recommend that you did if you get an opportunity to pick one up at a non-extortionate price, because why wouldn't you want to have the best premium tank? Most people are playing premium tanks not because they want to be overpowered, but because they want to make credits. And if you can play an overpowered vehicle to be able to make credits, well, you're probably going to be making more for your time, which is one of the reasons. A lot of people want to get bang for their buck as well. I'm not judging. I'm judging Wargaming, though, for their balancing department and the Defender and bringing it back. And I really wish that the game had stayed how it was with vehicles like the KV-5. Preferential matchmaking. You never had to deal with tier 10 tanks, so you could afford for the vehicles to be slightly weaker. Of course, it's long gone. World of Tanks has changed now. It's 10 years on. I'm not saying that you need to bring back preferential matchmaking. With the way that the matchmaker works now, it's definitely not going to work to make underpowered tanks at tier 8 that just consistently have to meet tier 8 and often tier 9 vehicles and tier 8 only matchups these days. So Wargaming obviously buffed the KV-5 a few patches ago. They toughened up the weak point. They increased its penetration from the worst at 167 up to 186. And so that means that the KV-5 now is no slouch. It can handle itself against equal tiered opponents. And if you play like Kalresh here, who's a very proficient player inside their KV-5 and is going to be our hero of the battle today, then you're going to see just what the KV-5 is made of. So, Koresh, take it away. How are you doing so far in this battle? Up to 3,000 damage, 5 kills, yeah, casual kill on third of the enemy team. Of course, this is fairly nice matchmaking for the KV-5, but definitely not the best matchmaking at all. As I mentioned, you can manage to get inside your tier 9 matchups as well. So, Karelsh is now deciding that he wants to take the fight to the enemy team. But he's got to be a little bit careful, because there's a Peter and an IS who are managing to get through his base. Now, he's done pretty much everything that one would want to do inside a battle of World of Tanks. Gone on a flank, crushed vehicles, including many equal-tiered vehicles, shutting down the Borsig on the enemy team, dealing with the artillery, and starting to dig out some of the more nasty tank destroyers on the enemy team, like the Charioteer and the Super Hellcat. One thing I'd like to see Karel's doing right now is starting to be a little bit more aggressive, because surely he has to worry about the fact that there's a Peter who's managing to get into his base, and I don't think those GW Panthers are going to be able to last too long. So, Karel, it's time to be aggressive right now. It's time to show what the raw power of the KV-5 can do. But luckily for him, it looks like the enemy team are more inclined to come back and try and defend a non-existent cap circle than they are to actually be able to attack their opponents. Remember, this is an assault. The enemy team don't have to defend. All they have to do is be able to attack. And all Karel has to do is just survive for the next 4 minutes, and then he'll be taking down probably a Kolobanov's medal if we see that the Peter is about to take out the GW Panther. And so, Karel probably going to end up now in a 1 versus 7 scenario. The kind of things that World of Tanks streams are made of. Although it wasn't really a 1 versus 7. It's a real 1v6, although really it's also looking like it was kind of going to be a 1 versus 7 there as the artillery went down a fraction after he shut down the KV-13. Well, let's not be pedantic, QuickyBaby. How funny is this? That he gets invited to a platoon by the GW Panther after the GW Panther is dead, and Karel is having to deal with 6 enemy tanks. Well, that's a good start to his 1 versus 6 as the T-43 burns. But he's got to deal with this Pantera. And this Pantera is dabbing the 2 key, as you probably quite rightly would do against a heavy tank of this stature. What Karel is doing fantastically here is he's basically angling his vehicle to a point where they can't shoot the weak point. And so now they're really going to have to kind of get lucky here or get lucky here, or fire heat rounds like the WZ-120 1FT is at his lower plate. So interestingly enough, the Peter on the enemy team has decided not to cap. Looks like Karel is also trying to do one of the more tricky to do missions inside the game, HT-15 Tempered Steel. So maybe that's why he's so keen to be able to expose himself, and he's nearly there with 10,000 combined block caused and hopefully received. Okay, the Pantera deciding to be aggressive. Karel puts in a fantastic shell into the tracks of the Pantera, locking him still. The Peter, who had the opportunity to cap the base, has managed to come back, and unexpecting Karel to be able to turn around there, he shuts him down. Good focus fire. But the Pantera continues to put premium rounds in. Who's he going to bounce? He's going to try and bounce the T-43, who's now firing high explosive rounds. Will he manage to shoot the Pantera just before? But oh dear, a disastrous low roll, meaning that Karel's 300 alpha damage only rolls for 274, leaving the Pantera on 20 hit points, which he quite rapidly now mops up. All right. Very nasty tank destroyer in front of you. Surely that has to be the focus. A round goes through the lower plate of the WZ-120 1FT, and I love that Karel is not even dabbing the 2 key here to deal with the rather dangerous Chinese tank destroyer. Now Karel is on 13,499. All he needs to do is to be able to get a little bit more to be able to pick up his completion of one of the hardest missions to do, HT-15. For the Object 260, Karel, my heart's pounding for you right now. Your turret is damaged. Your tracks are off. Everything is pretty much damaged about this KV-5. But this showed you exactly why this tank is as hard as a rock. And why it's unsurprising that Karel is trying to complete HT-15 with it. Okay, so definitely done 25% of the total damage done. Okay, Karel, come on, I'm rooting for you here. We're going to do HT-15 with honors for the Object 260. The GW Panther on the enemy team will have exactly the right amount of hit points, or Karel could probably actually just about die and still be able to complete this, but albeit without honors. Alright, 42 seconds left on the cap. Where is this GW Panther going to be? Karel now firing blind into the cap circle. And talking about blind, well, the KV-5 may be as hard as a rock, it's also as blind as a bat. Alright, with 57 seconds left on this game now, all Karel has to do is just splash the GW Panther, interrupt him once, and that will be enough. Because as soon as he interrupts him, then all he has to do is just survive the rest of the battle. Come on, Karel, 15 seconds left. Oh, come on, KV-5, just a little bit faster towards the cap circle. Where is this GW Panther? Please don't make this the biggest heartbreak of 2020. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1... No! That was a painful game. Can you believe this one? Imagine being 200 out of 14,000 away to complete HT-15 with honors for the Object 260. And quite rightly, at least there's one sensible player on the enemy team, the GW Panther, who made it into the cap circle and didn't feed Karel 1 by 1 by 1 for his effective 1 versus 7. So I'm sorry to do it to you, YouTube, but if I only posted winning replays, where would the suspense be? I've got to throw in a few curveballs there, and I'm sorry that Karelsh had to come at your expense. This was a phenomenal game for the KV5. It was pretty much perfect. Look at this. 200,000 profit, 6,600 damage dealt, more than anyone would expect, and 1,404 base experience for a loss. That's just simply outrageous. And when you factor in courageous resistance into this game, this would be the equivalent of about a 2,200 or 2,300 base experience game. It was a simply gigantic game, and this hard as a rock KV5 managed to block 5,600 damage, enough to kill the vehicle 3 times over. So Karelsh, my condolences to you for what might be possibly one of the biggest heartbreaks I've ever seen. But you can't take anything away from comedy. Yeah, might as well be comedy on the enemy team, and the GW Panther did exactly the right thing to cap it out and not feed the KV5 1 by 1 by 1. So that's it for today, ladies and gents. I hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, give it a thumbs up, but if you hated it, give it a thumbs down. And if you're watching this video as it's released on Sunday, it's time for another World of Tanks Tech Tree Showcase right now on twitch.tv/QuickyBaby. And this week it was a close call between the Object 277, but the winner is, it's going to be a controversial one. Love it or hate it, like Marmite, right? The Panhard EBR 105. So come and take a look as I play through the fastest tech tree in World of Tanks, so I can let you know everything there is to know about these really fast vehicles. Yeah, I'll try and keep the puns to a minimum. And for any of you out there who have ever wanted to get one of my terrible t-shirts on my Teespring store, Teespring is holding a 1-day only sale where you can get anything you want for 10% off, delivered worldwide in sizes up to 5XL. Thank you so much to everyone who does support my content in that way, and I'll put a link in the description down below. Make sure you click it because it will automatically activate the code to be able to get the 10% off your purchase. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.